When Thomas Williams, a black man and owner of a major company, is suddenly thrown out of his own office, humiliated and wrongly accused, everyone in the building watches in silence as this cruel injustice plays out. Anna, the secretary, and a security guard act out of bias and assumptions, thinking they're doing the right thing until they find out the truth about who Thomas really is. Their reality shatters under the weight of their prejudice. Just how deep can blind hatred go? And how will a man so wrongly humiliated respond? What follows will shock even the most hardened observer. But to understand how it all began, we must go back. Anna, a long-time secretary, sat behind her desk, surrounded by polished leather chairs, warm lights, and neatly arranged files. Her morning was going smoothly until a man walked in and changed everything. He was tall, dressed in a sharp suit, and carried himself with quiet confidence. This was Thomas Williams. But to Anna, his confidence didn't fit. Something about him felt out of place. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard as she raised her eyes slowly, suspicion already building. She watched him closely, as if searching for a reason to send him away. Her tone stayed professional, but her expression gave her away. Ignoring the look she gave him, Thomas stepped forward. "Good morning. I'm Thomas Williams. I need to get inside. I have a meeting," he said politely. Anna frowned and stood up, clearly irritated. "Your name's not on the list," she snapped, her voice sharp and controlling. "Who let you in?" she demanded, clearly disturbed by his presence. Thomas, surprised but calm, replied, "I'm the owner of this company, ma'am. I don't need an invitation." Her eyes narrowed with disbelief. "Owner? You?" she said mockingly. "We don't let just anyone in without proof." Her tone turned colder. "You should leave before I call security." Thomas stayed composed on the outside, but inside he felt his anger rising, each word cut into his pride. Taking a steady breath, he said, "Ma'am, my last name is Williams. I own this place. Maybe you just didn't know." But Anna didn't let him finish. "Didn't know?" she said loudly, nearly yelling. She turned to the security guard, her voice filled with authority. "Is this some kind of joke?" she asked, laughing coldly. "This man says he owns the company." The guard came over, standing between Thomas and the office doors. Anna demanded ID. Thomas, trying to stay patient, handed over his identification, hoping it would end the nonsense, but Anna barely looked at it. She had already made up her mind. "I'm telling you one last time," she said, now with a threatening edge. "People like you don't belong here. Leave, or I'll call the police." Her voice was icy, her eyes burned with arrogance. Thomas tried to stay calm, holding back his anger as he attempted to explain, but before he could say much, the security guard stepped in front of him, placing a firm hand on his shoulder, not rough, but clearly blocking his way. "Listen," Thomas said, his voice steady. "You're making a serious mistake." Anna let out a cruel laugh. "A mistake? The only mistake was letting you through the door," she nearly shouted. Then she turned to the guard and added coldly, "Do you think we let just anyone in? You're in the wrong place." Her tone was sharp and threatening. "Leave now, or I'll call the police and say you tried to get in with fake documents," she warned, clearly ready to destroy his name and reputation. The guard stood ready to act without question. Without warning, he shoved Thomas with a heavy hand, hitting him in the chest. Thomas staggered but managed to stay standing. "Didn't you hear her?" the guard growled, his face twisted in anger. The same hatred that burned in Anna's eyes now glared from the guards. It was clear. They didn't see Thomas as someone who belonged. They acted like they were protecting the office from someone unworthy. Despite the way he was treated, Thomas tried hard to keep control. But things were quickly getting out of hand. His body was tense and his mind was filled with anger at the injustice he was facing. Still, he refused to back down. What was happening to him was clear. "This is racism," Thomas said, his voice calm but firm. Anna, clearly enjoying the scene, laughed again, a cold, cruel sound. "Racism? Really?" she mocked, with not a trace of guilt. "I'm just doing my job," she said sharply. as if that made her behavior acceptable. "If you were really who you say you are, people would know you," she added, her voice full of doubt and disrespect. Her eyes narrowed as she looked at him with open disgust. "People like you aren't on the list of company owners," she said. The words were sharp and cruel, cutting deep. The guard, ready to take things further, grabbed Thomas's arm and squeezed it tightly. Thomas winced from the pain. "You pushed it too far," the guard snarled. "You should have left when you had the chance." Thomas tried to break free, but the guard only tightened his hold. This wasn't just about removing someone, it was about showing power over a man who didn't fit their narrow view of who belonged. Still gripping Thomas, the guard dragged him toward the exit, ignoring his resistance. The entire office was silent, watching the last act of this public humiliation. A few employees smirked, clearly enjoying the moment. Others looked uncomfortable, but their silence stung just as badly. They turned their heads, pretending nothing was wrong, though they knew they were witnessing something deeply unfair. Thomas felt suffocated, not just by the guard's grip, but by the anger rising inside him. What hurt more than being thrown out was the way others stood by, doing nothing, or worse, enjoying his shame. Then the silence was broken. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. A group of managers stepped out of the elevator, their expressions tense, sensing that something wasn't right. One of them, tall and suited, walked quickly toward the scene, his face puzzled and alert. "What's going on here?" he asked, noticing the guard pushing Thomas. His voice was calm but cautious, as if he already sensed things had gone too far. Anna answered right away, confidently and without hesitation. "This man tried to enter the office without permission," she said. Her eyes passed over Thomas, but her tone stayed cold. "He says he owns the company." The manager stared at her, then turned to Thomas. For a few long seconds he said nothing. Time seemed to freeze. Thomas quietly fixed his jacket, his expression calm but serious. "That's correct," Thomas said clearly, stepping forward. "I'm the owner of this company, and I'd like an explanation." His voice carried the weight of dignity, hurt, and quiet fury. The manager's face went pale. "Mr. Williams?" he asked, barely above a whisper, his voice full of shock. "Is it really you?" "Yes," Thomas replied, his voice cold. "It's me." The manager stood frozen for a moment, then slowly turned to Anna. The reality of what she had done hit her all at once. Her face drained of color, her eyes wide with fear. The guard, realizing the truth, instantly let go of Thomas's arm. "Mr. Williams," the manager stammered, his voice shaking, "please, forgive us. This is all a horrible misunderstanding." He looked from Anna to the guard, searching for words, but none came. Anna stood there in silence, overwhelmed with shame. Her thoughts were spinning. How did I let this happen? In a flash, she saw her career slipping away. But worse than losing her job was the deep guilt. She had done something that couldn't be undone. "Mr. Williams, please," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I'm so sorry." But Thomas didn't answer right away. He looked at both of them, his eyes full of pain, not just from what happened today, but from everything this moment represented. This wasn't just about one mistake, it was about a system that had always treated him and others like him unfairly. "You should think about how you judge people based on how they look," Thomas said, his voice quiet but firm. Each word felt final, like a verdict. Then without another word he turned and walked away, leaving the room in complete silence. Anna stood frozen. Her job might be over, but what hurt more was realizing the truth. She had become part of the very injustice she once thought she was against. Everything she believed about fairness and right and wrong shattered in that moment.